What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Latest on Sports Podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you guys who tune in to our episodes. Today, we have a fairly simple episode to go over. All we're going to be doing is going over all of the NFL opt-outs. So, this will be going up, I believe, on Friday, filming this on Thursday. So, today was actually the last day that all players could report to the teams that they were choosing to opt out. Now, in my opinion, I think it was fairly cowardly of the NFL to move up the opt-out date. I think the NFL saw guys like C.J. Mosley opting out. You saw guys like Tre'Davious White and Stephon Diggs seriously considering opting out, but they didn't. So I think the NFL got nervous that too many great players were going to opt out, and so they just moved it up. So it would be, less enticing for these players to opt out. Anyway, with that out of the way, we're going to hop right into it. Going to start with the AFC West. The Broncos lost offensive tackle Juwan James. Big loss for them. Huge free agent signing. Already a subpar offensive line now without Juwan James. Also lost defensive tackle Kyle Peko. He's a playmaker. Not the end of the world, though. Chiefs lost offensive tackle Lucas Niang. Not the end of the world. Running back Damian Williams, who in my opinion should have been the Super Bowl MVP, but nevertheless they drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the first round, so they should be okay. And then also they lost offensive guard Laurent Duvernay-Tardif. He's a doctor. He actually fought the COVID outbreak in the spring, and so I'm sure he's seen firsthand just how bad this is, so this one actually does not surprise me at all. Chargers get lucky. Nobody opts out for them. And the Raiders lose linebacker Ukeme Iligwe, defensive back DJ Killings, and defensive end Jeremiah Valioga. Neither of the three are going to be huge playmakers, and neither of the three are really going to be X factors for the Raiders this upcoming season, so decent turnout for them. Moving on to the AFC North, the Ravens lose offensive tackle Andre Smith. This is a blow. Andre Smith is a pretty solid offensive tackle. He is a starter in this league. Not good. For the defending MVP, Lamar Jackson, wide receiver DeAnthony Thomas for the Ravens also opts out. This guy was a god in college. That's all I can think of when I think of DeAnthony Thomas at Oregon. But not a huge loss with DeAnthony Thomas for the Ravens. Moving on to the Browns. The Browns had a tough turnout here. They lose 4 offensive linemen. Offensive guard Malcolm Bridgeton. Offensive guard Colby Gossett. Offensive guard Drew Forbes. And offensive tackle Drake Dorbeck. And they also lost defensive tackle Andrew Billings. Rough turnout for the Browns here. At least they got Jedrick Wills in the first round, but you just hate to lose 4 offensive linemen, specifically offensive linemen. Not all 4 of these guys would have been starting, but still, a lot of these guys are depth guys, and it just hurts to lose 4 people at the same position. Bengals lose offensive tackle Isaiah Prince and defensive tackle Josh Tupou. Neither of the two are real X factors for them, but still sucks to lose offensive linemen and defensive linemen because they go down quick. Steelers get lucky, lose nobody. Patriots. Gosh, this is a rough year for them. Honestly, conspiracy, real quick. Patriots are telling a lot of their guys, this is my conspiracy, okay? It's not true. Not true. Patriots are telling a lot of their guys to opt out. Hear me out. They all opt out. They go 1-15, whatever, 0-16. Who knows? Cam Newton might not even get in. And then they get Trevor Lawrence in and start off another 20-year dynasty. I know nobody wants to hear it. I know. But they lose starting tight end Matt Lacoste. Probably a starting wide receiver, Marquise Lee. Starting safety, Patrick Chung. Pro Bowl linebacker, Deontay Hightower. Brandon Bolden, special teams, huge contributor. Scored a touchdown on the punt return unit last year. And starting offensive tackle, Marcus Cannon. They lose starting fullback, Dan Vitale. And depth offensive lineman, Najee Torin. Terrible, terrible news for Pats fans. Gosh, can 2020 get any worse for them? Bills lose cornerback E.J. Gaines and defensive tackle star Lou Tulele. Could have been a lot worse for them. Stephon Diggs was thinking about opting out along with Tre'Davious White. So this could have been worse for Bills fans. So I'm sure it was at least a relief just to see E.J. Gaines and star Lou Tulele on this list. The Dolphins lose 2 wide receivers, Allen Hurns and Albert Wilson. Now, if you're a fantasy football guy like me, Preston Williams seems awkwardly enticing now. Shoot, I might take him up in around 12. Just to make sure I've got him and nobody else. Jets lose former first-round pick wide receiver Josh Doctson. Huge loss. Linebacker C.J. Mosley in the middle of their defense. And an offensive lineman. Not even going to try to pronounce his name because it's very long. But I don't think he's going to start for them, so not a huge loss. But C.J. Mosley and Josh Jackson are definitely going to hurt for this team. Moving on to the AFC South, the Texans lose defensive tackle Eddie Vanderdoes. At least they drafted a defensive tackle with their first selection in round 2. I guess good for them that I guess Eddie's going to have less of a role than if they did not draft their defensive tackle. So, not too bad of a turnout for the Texans. The Colts lose linebacker Sky Moore, second-year corner Marvell Tell, and safety Roland Milligan. Neither of these guys are going to be huge contributors. Marvell Tell showed a little bit of potential last year, but Sky Moore, linebacker, obviously behind one of the better linebacking class. So Colts had a decent turnout as well. Jacksonville loses cornerback Rashawn Melvin, defensive tackle Al Woods, and edge rusher Laurentry McKay. Kind of rough for the Jags. Rashawn Melvin could have been a starter. Granted, they got C.J. Henderson in the first round, so C.J. Henderson is going to have to step up just a little bit more, and then a veteran defensive tackle in Al Woods. They have a pretty decent defensive line, to say the least, so Al Woods isn't a huge loss, but you just hate to lose veterans like that. Titans lose offensive lineman Anthony McKinney. Luckily for them, they drafted Isaiah Wilson in the first round, so the offensive lineman will not be a huge blow for them. Moving on to the NFC, we're going to the NFC West. The Seahawks lose offensive guard Chance Warmack. Might have started, might not have started. A little bit of battle in camp to see who would have taken that guard spot, but still not a good look for the Seahawks, considering their offensive line is not the greatest to begin with. San Francisco loses offensive lineman Sean Coleman, wide receiver Travis Benjamin. I don't see Benjamin having too much of a role outside of maybe return, kick return, and punt return. But again, losing offensive line depth seems to be the trend for a lot of these teams. Not good. Travis Benjamin, obviously very, very fast. Not good to lose him either. The Cardinals lose offensive tackle Marcus Gilbert. Rough for the Cardinals. Did not have a good offensive line to begin with last year. Lost their second round pick in the trade for Kenyon Drake. Obviously, they took Isaiah Simmons in round 1, but with round 3, they did take an offensive tackle, but they lose the tackle that would start opposite of Josh Jones. So, not a good turnout for the Cardinals. Moving on to the last team in this division, we've got the Rams, who lose offensive tackle Chandler Brewer. Really not the end of the world. That guy, is not an X factor for them, but still seems to be the trend again. Offensive line depth going down. Not good. Moving on to the NFC North, the Bears lose safety Jordan Lucas and defensive tackle Eddie Goldman. Eddie Goldman is the more notable loss here. Definitely would have been a starter on this team. He's a young, good player, former first-round pick, so this is actually a pretty decently large loss for the Bears here with Eddie Goldman gone. The Packers lose wide receiver Devin Funchess. Devin Funchess now basically goes 2 years without football. Broke his collarbone last year with the Colts. Sat out the entire season, essentially, because he got hurt in the fourth quarter of week 1, and now he's going to miss this whole season too. And the Lions lose former Packers wide receiver Geronimo Allison. So the Packers lose Geronimo Allison in free agency, then Devin Funchess to the opt-out rule. And already kind of a thin wide receiver core, so not good for the Packers. Staying on the Lions, as we mentioned, Geronimo Allison, defensive tackle John Atkins. Could have been a playmaker, but not too big of a loss. And they also lose center Russell Bodine. Again, offensive line depth. Gosh, you gotta have it in this league. Not good for the Lions. Vikings, arguably the worst turnout here in the NFC North. They lose defensive tackle Michael Pierce. This was their replacement for Linval Joseph, who they lost in free agency. Michael Pierce coming to his first year with the Vikings from the Ravens. Just a really, really tough loss. Michael Pearson, up-and-coming defensive tackle in this league, could have been a great star for the Vikings, but you hate to see it. Hate to see the Vikings lose such a great player. Moving on to the NFC East, the Cowboys lose starting fullback Jamazi Olawe, wide receiver Stephen Guidry, and cornerback Maurice Kennedy. Outside of Olawe, which I'm not really sure how many snaps he gets per game, but he is the center. But Guidry and Kennedy are not huge losses for the Cowboys. Wide receiver Marquise Goodwin is the only absence for the Eagles. If you know Marquise Goodwin's story, it's a heartbreaking story. He's lost a couple of kids to miscarries and actually lost a kid who was born prematurely. So good for Marquise Goodwin and staying home, keeping his family healthy, because he's also got a young kid. Really heartbreaking if you want to look into his story, but Marquise Goodwin, I feel like, has a good excuse to opt out of this season. Moving on to the Giants, they lose most notably offensive tackle Nate Solder. Luckily, they drafted Andrew Thomas at pick number 4, who honestly I thought was the number 2 offensive tackle. Some people were putting a little bit of disrespect on his name during the draft. I really liked who they took in the first round. Obviously, Nate Solder, though, not good to lose. They were moving on. They also lost wide receiver Damari Scott and cornerback Sam Beal. Outside of Solder, they didn't take too many losses, but Solder is a huge loss for Daniel Jones and that team. The Washington football team, I guess, is what we're calling them now. Not too big of losses. They lose defensive lineman Caleb Brantley and linebacker Josh Harvey Clemens. They lost them in kind of their stronger categories. They have one of the better defensive lines, especially with the addition of Chase Young at pick number 2. So not a deal breaker for Washington, but I still don't really see them as a contender, even for the playoffs, considering how good their division is. So not the end of the world for the Washington football team. Last division, the NFC South, the Saints lose 2 tight ends, Cole Wick and Jason Vanderon. I guess they drafted Adam Trautman in the 3rd round, so that panned out. They've got a 3rd round tight end when they lose 2 of them, so we'll see how that'll play out for them. The Falcons get lucky. They don't lose anybody. The Bucs only lose Brad Seaton, offensive tackle. They got an offensive tackle, Tristan Wirfs, in the 1st round. Had to trade up 1 individual pick for him, but not the end of the world for the Bucs. Panthers lose outside linebacker Christian Miller, who could have been a playmaker for him, and linebacker Jordan Mack, who again could have been a rotational stud. They lose 2 linebackers, not good for the Panthers. That's the last team that we're going over. That's all 32 teams, and it's worth noting that free agent offensive guard, former Saint Larry Warford, has opted out. Interesting to me that he hadn't been signed yet, because he got released around draft time. So the fact that he made it all the way to August without being picked up surprises me, but worth noting that he opted out. So thank you guys for listening. That's all 32 teams. I appreciate everything that you guys do for us, subscribing, liking our videos, commenting, letting us know what we can do. You can follow us on our socials. Instagram is at Latest on Sports Podcast. Twitter, I believe, is LOS Podcast. So that's where you guys can find us there. Leave a comment if you got anything else you want us to talk about. And also, if you are a fan and you heard your team get talked about in this episode, which we talked about all 32 teams, so I know you guys heard your team, let us know what you think about your type of players, or the type of players that opted out for your team. Let us know. Are they going to be like contributors for your team? Do you think it's fine that you guys will still be good this year? Let us know how you feel about the players that opted out for your team. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll catch you shortly.